Hey, all you happy lost souls. How y'all doing out there? Please like and subscribe. If not, sorry I wasted your time. But anyways, this is just a video. It's an announcement, honestly. Been working very hard for years on a documentary about George Washington, the Revolutionary War, and specifically the Philadelphia campaign, because so much of it took place right where I live. Specifically discussing the Battle of Edge Hill, also known as the Battle of Whitemarsh. We're talking about Washington's movements in the year of 1777. There's other videos on my channel that explain about the Indians' lost silver mines in the same area. Well, this is all tied to that as well. The documentary is going to ride on all of the roads and go down all of the same paths that Washington and his troops used during the attack on Germantown and then the retreat. It's going to help fill in a 2-month gap in the historical record after the retreat of Germantown. I believe in the hypothesis and the idea that I'm putting forth, the thesis I'm putting forth, is that Raythorn Farm, and what is now called Raythorn Farm, is Wynkoops' old farm property located now. It's the headquarters of the Pennypack Preservation. This is the property that I've described before as being set up very similar to Valley Forge's encampment layout. It is an important note that the Pennypack at the time was the largest production area that the colonial army had access to, because my area was pro-colonial. And a lot of the surrounding areas were Tory or pro-British. When you think of an army, it needs to be supplied. Washington's army had near 10,000 men if you count the militia. They lost around 700 to injury or casualty the night that they attacked Germantown. It goes around October 4th. Washington tried to do almost a triple envelopment to surround Mount Airy Picket, a fortification, because at this point the British had conquered Philadelphia. They were in Philadelphia. We had to vanquish the seat of our government at the time. Well, Wynkoop was really good friends with Washington, the whole family. And he was actually a person, he was a member of the Congress at the time, the Continental Congress, I guess you would call it. He also ran Newtown. And if you look at the Newtown Railroad line, that is now part of the trail system of the preservation, way back in the 1700s, that was a road. That road went from Wynkoops' property out here in Huntington Valley to his property in Newtown, where, guess what? All the silver for the colonials and the Continentals was stored there. So, coincidence? I think not. Did they possibly stumble or have information of those mines that the natives had access to and hid years and years prior? Possibly. The Dones gang also had family members that owned property very near to this, and they're the ones that ended up robbing the treasury like 8 years later. Maybe it was a little less than 8 years later. All of these things are going to be tied together in this documentary. Battle scenes like the Battle of Edge Hill, Germantown, my interest in this really started to peak when I saw the layout. There's also along the Pennypack, there are these large vaults, essentially. They call them drafting cellars, but there's no historic record about them. They're really big to be drafting cellars. They're almost 15 to 18 feet deep into the ground. They're all stone lined. They're about 40 feet long by 20 feet wide. To me, they look like munition dumps or storage vaults that you could hide and keep protected, especially for gunpowder, because if they ever blew up or anything, at least they'd be underground. But like I said, I digress. I just mainly want to put this out to let you guys know that I'm still working on all the filming, and I have to edit it and figuring out how I'm going to release it, because in total it's probably going to be around 2 hours long. So what I'll probably do is release them in 4 parts. That'll be between 30 and 40 minutes each, and then I'll release the final 2-hour version where all the episodes are played together that tie the story together. For source information, we use tons of old maps that we can get our hands on. I've gone deep into the historical record, looking into eulogies and looking into anything from relatives or relations to any of the people involved in this. The other huge thing I use is street names, because once you have the maps, you can see where the old roads are and which ones weren't around back then. You have a pretty good idea of the oldest roads because they usually connect mills together. Your mills, your grist mills, powder mills, paper mills, they were the industry. That was the manufacturing and industry of the day. And the Pennypack, like I said, was one of the most industrialized streams at the time in America. So, and the other huge thing is street names and why they're called that. In this case, my neighborhood has some really unusual ones. First off, Silver Ave, because silver was discovered there later on by Fraser in the 1800s. So we have silver on the historical record of being found. They even named the street after it. Then we have streets like Gray Horse, Camp Meeting, Morgan Mill, Division, Overlook, Lookout. These are all names you can find associated with Revolutionary War encampments. Like a Gray Horse was a nickname for the postal rider, the person that delivered messages. Lookout or Overlook is the point leading up to Lookout, and Overlook Road is attached to Lookout. It's the highest point in Montgomery County. And the historical record said after Washington retreated from Germantown in October of 1777, that he retreated to the high grounds of Whitemarsh, to the hills surrounding Whitemarsh. And back then, Whitemarsh was a name for a much larger area than it is today. It encompassed Abington, Willow Grove, it encompassed Roslyn, parts of Ambler. So, and a lot of Upper Moreland. His lines after the retreat stretched from where Fort Washington Park is along the Wissahickon Creek in Ambler. Fort Washington is the actual name of the area. Go figure. And that was the highest point in that location. And he had troops staged in fortifications on the high grounds along Edge Hill. If he didn't have the high grounds of this neighborhood, the British could simply outflank him and go around him. So this area being the supply hub for Washington's army, a safe zone because it's friendly and friendly to Washington's cause. He has known friends in the area, and we need to get into the best part. Who is Morgan Mill? And why do the old maps call the area I live in Morganville? Well, it's Daniel Morgan. And if any of you have watched the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, that's a loose representation on the life of Daniel Morgan. I believe his great-great uncle or even great-great-grandfather he's related to the pirate Henry Morgan, from Captain Morgan Rum. He was a staunch patriot and supporter of Washington. And if he controlled the main mills along the Pennypack at the time, and the area was named after him, and he fought in the Philadelphia campaign with Washington running the militia groups, and he's occupying the highest point in Montgomery County. And George Washington, if you know anything about his life, he was a surveyor before he was a general. And he primarily was able to beat the British, not in open contest, but by being able to retreat and hide and know the land way better than the occupying force, because he had been up and down this coastline and throughout the colonies from the French and Indian War on. So he had a genius level of understanding the terrain and how to move in and out of areas kind of like a ghost. Washington was also a spy master. He started the Copa spy ring, which eventually became the CIA. He was extremely secretive about his movements, so historically we don't have a ton on record, so there's a lot of blanks to fill in. Along with some of the archaeological evidence I found along the Pennypack Creek in this area, being glass from the Revolutionary War period, dominos, made from ivory, French leaded glass, cobalt glass, a pipe that may actually be older than the Revolutionary War, but there's some French and Indian and Beaver War activity along the creek too. But it's shaped in a cannon. It's still got a little bit of red enamel on it. The wheels are the bowl piece, and the stem of the pipe is the cannon. So I found the coupling ring for the front of a I forget what pound cannon it was. Like I said, I found the pipe. I found various spoons that date to that time period. They're badly corroded. So they're just really spoon handles. We found wooden buttons, that type of stuff. Possibly a really rusted out portion of a blade or bayonet of some sort. These are some of the archaeological things I was able to find in alluvial deposits, like the places where you're allowed to look. You can't dig or anything on any of these lands. They're preservations and parks, so there's a lot of rules. But the one rule I do know is about alluvial deposits and streams and hobby hunting. As long as you're not digging and you don't have a mining operation or something going on, you can pick a few things up off the ground in alluvial deposits. You're not going to get in trouble for that. But alluvial means they got tides, they're connected to the oceans. There's really no control over the stuff that's in the water, essentially. There's no law over it. It's, nobody can own it, essentially. There's no jurisdiction over it. Now, when you're talking about minerals and stuff, there's different mineral rights and claims and things, but as long as it's a hobby hunting and you're not digging and you're not causing damage to the actual land, you're within your rights. But these are all clues, but I just wanted to put out some of the information, what the documentary is kind of going to be about. It's extremely extensive, and this is me putting forth a thesis in this documentary. This does not mean that this historically actually occurred, but I would say I had to put my life on it. I'm about 98% sure of this. That's how much research I've done in this over the last, I don't know, it's probably been 11, 12 years, because I originally got into this because I was really into the story of the Dones gang. They were from the Plumsteadville area. They were Quakers. Moses and Noah Doan. I mean, they were amazing horsemen and crazy athletic prowess, and they were horse burglars and spies for the British. They actually warned the Hessians a few days before Washington attacked in December of 1776 on Christmas when he crossed the Delaware. The Hessian soldier disregarded the note informing the British Army that Washington was on the other side of the river with a large force heading his way. He chose to ignore it, thinking that he was most likely a double agent. But that's a different story that will be tied into this documentary. Documentary ties together the silver mines, its purpose and its importance in aiding the Philadelphia campaign for the Continental Army during 1777. I put forth a thesis that this was an encampment. It was the attack was launched from here, and then they retreated back to this place. It was a place that was supplying the entire Philadelphia campaign until Washington was forced to move. After the Battle of Edgehill on December 8th, 1777, he started to pack up camp and move towards Valley Forge, his famous winter encampment, because the British had moved. And in Napoleonic type warfare, the idea is always to be on high ground, to check your opponent with your artillery. And Washington had to get into a better location. The encampment sites are always going to be built by forests and creeks because they need those resources. They to build cabins and need water to supply their army and their horses. There was also around the Wynkoops old house in the preservation, this ancient farm that was Wynkoops, and you can still see all the fields and everything. I forgot what I was saying, but he had this whole, the area around his whole his home, and the way his home was built. It's built on high ground that you can't see from any road. It sits back into a thicket, and it oversees all of the fields in the area. The house looks exactly built in the style, but way smaller, of the Moreland House, which is another house that Washington stayed on. That was, I think, prior to the attack on Trenton. But it was another fortified headquarter location. This was kind of set up the same way with rivets, with they altered the earth and earthscaped, gun emplacements and rivets and things like that. They literally dug out part of the field concave. So like if an army or anyone had to march over this, if you're on the high ground, you could see them before they ever could know you were there, and you could shoot down onto them. I forget what the French called this. I have to look that up. But anyway, stay tuned. I don't know when the first episode's going to be out on this. It's still probably weeks off. I'm still not even done the filming, like I said. So I just wanted to let you guys know where I'm at with this and how much crazier this story is going to get. Anyways, stay safe. Please subscribe. And if you're lost, stay happy and find your soul, find yourself. And it's in those moments that we're lost, we really truly find our inner selves. Anyways, guys, please subscribe. Stay tuned. Pretty excited about this project. A lot of work. Love y'all. Peace.